So like you mentioned, Drake Maye was someone the Patriots seemed really excited to actually be getting. So I'm curious, from what you were able to learn from your time there, one, why was Drake Maye the guy? I think we've heard some things from them, but obviously different perspective. And also another thing that they've talked about is not wanting too many guys in Drake Maye's ear. So from what you know, do you have an idea of who's actually going to be talking to Drake Maye and working with him? Because I know Alex Van Pelt, when he was in Cleveland, even though he's the offensive coordinator, he said, no, like I have had a lot of success with quarterbacks. I will be involved. But you've also got TC McCartney and Ben McAdoo. So how's that going to work out?
Yeah, two good and separate topics. So I will say this. Just let's keep it real. From what I understand, the Patriots would took whoever dropped to them out of the big three. Like, you can make it however. We fell in love with Drake Maye, and we made this to them. It wasn't really a choice. I know the JJ McCarthy stuff popped up late. From what I understood, he was never really a consideration to be taken over Drake Maye. JJ would have been an option if they did decide, hey, we want to take that Godfather trade offer and trade back to 6 or trade back to 11, then maybe we look at the J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix group. But they very much thought it was Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake Maye, whatever order you want. I don't know for sure if Drake Maye would have been the pick if, for whatever reason, Washington went J.J. McCarthy and shocked some folks. Like, that would have been an interesting debate. I do know, like Jerod Mayo liked Jaden Daniels a lot. He was very honest with me with that. And I like Jaden Daniels a lot. I'm just gonna be honest. I think Jaden Daniels is gonna be a star. Not saying Drake can't be that player. I think Jaden's a little bit more ready right now, and you'll see that more immediate. And so if you're comparing, it may be something where, hey, Caleb and Jaden, at least in my view, are gonna go out to the early lead, and they're gonna look like the I don't know if they have a CJ Stroud type year, but one of them may be CJ Stroud. And you're sitting there with your quarterback like, are you sure we got the right one? And wait 2 or 3 years, and I think Drake will be there with him, right? And so I think the thought for Drake, once they realized it was going to be Caleb at 1 and Jaden at 2, was that, hey, Drake can grow as we can grow. Like, I think Jerod and Elliott are very honest with themselves, which I think is good, that we are not a championship team. Like, I included this anecdote later in the story, and I for those of you who read the story, I understand if you didn't get to this part because it was a long story. It's like it was 3,000 plus word story I ended up with, but it was a cool anecdote. I feel like I wanted to put at the end. Jerod had told me that he had the conversation with KJ Osborne after they had got him, and he was essentially like, hey, I told him straight up, we're not Super Bowl or bust. Because you're here, we're not going to all of a sudden win a championship. Like, I'm not going to sell you this stuff that a lot of people sell people to get free agents there. It's going to be a journey, and really, we just want to be able to be really competitive, grow, and really play complementary football, and be able to make those hidden plays on special teams, the good plays on defense, and grow as an offense. And I think that's a realistic expectation for the Patriots. Like, I know people will do these shows in May, June, July and say, hey, what's considered a success for? I don't know if there's a win amount that you can put on that, right? This is a 4-13 team. I do not believe they're going to make the playoffs in 2024. I'm sorry, Patriots fans. I'm just going to keep it real. I don't care how good Drake is year one, and I do think that he will play and start at some point in year one. I don't think that he will be a redshirt player. I do not think this is a playoff team. I think they still have a lot of holes on this roster. I think that they filled some potentially in the draft, but it's going to take some time. And so Drake also is not a finished product as a player. Some of the questions about Drake were, hey, he's got sporadic accuracy. Sometimes when the pocket got a little bit messy, he moved out a little quickly. He may have missed some throws or missed some reads they thought that he should not have missed. And then you get to a situation where he's also a player where you haven't seen the fullness of a success that you've seen in a JJ winning the national title, a Jaden winning a Heisman Trophy. So, like, is he going to be able to be at the elite of the elite? Is he going to be able to tap into all of those skill sets? We know he has a big arm. We know he's a really good athlete. We know that he can make every throw. Can he put it all together? I think those are all real questions for Drake that it's going to take time to be able to answer. He's only 21 years old. He's got tremendous upside, but as Mayo mentioned in the process, he's also got a floor. Like, this is not a can't miss prospect. He has bust potential for whatever that's worth. But you also got to take a chance. And we talked about this a little offline. Like, you're picking in the top 3, you're picking in the top 5. Yeah, you can say, hey, I'm going to hit a single for baseball term. I'm going to hit a single, or I'm going to hit a double. Where, hey, I know this guy's going to at least be a starter for 5 to 10 years, right? You could certainly draft it. And I think JJ probably falls in that category for me. I think JJ McCarthy is going to be a starter in this league for 10 years at least. Now, whether he's the 11th best quarterback in football, the 19th best quarterback in football, if he touches somewhere in the top 10, I don't know. But I think that's where his range is. Drake, if he hits his full potential, he could be a top 5 quarterback in 5 years, right? And I think that's why you're taking that swing. There's also a chance he doesn't work out. Just keep it honest. And you may be looking for another quarterback in 3 or 4 years, but you got to take that shot. And I think that's what they're doing here, of saying he's got high end talent. And one thing that I think was not really portrayed a lot in the draft process, that I learned a lot in the last week, and I try to share those stories on TV and in the story. He's a competitive beast, for lack of a better phrase. Like, he's got some dog in him. You know, it's weird. You listen to him talk. He's a southern kid from North Carolina. He talks fast. He's just so jovial all over the place. My first thought is, man, this is an interesting fit for Boston. There's not a lot of in Boston that talk and move like like Drake Maye. But I think that you start to get into who he is, and you start to see this kind of that competitive nature, like something that's small. And I talked about this in the story and on TV. The night before the draft, he's playing 4-on-4 basketball in Detroit with his brothers. His dad's watching by pins and needles, hoping he doesn't get hurt. You got millions of dollars on the line, son. Why are you gonna risk breaking your ankle here with your brothers? And his brothers, it's funny, he calls himself the run of the family. He's 6'4", 6'5", but you look at his brothers, they're all 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". So he's the small guy who's been get beat up his whole life. And so that's his kind of roots. And so that was a cool kind of element for me, just kind of seeing that. And apparently Drake ended up killing it on the court that day, along with Luke May, who some of you guys will remember, he played for North Carolina, made the game-winning shot in the Elite Eight against Kentucky the year they won the title. He plays basketball professionally in Japan now. And so apparently him and Drake were going crazy. And it's funny, I had interviewed Drake on Friday, a little one-on-one off to the side, and I had some fun with him. I asked him his basketball comp. He said, I'm an off-brand Jason Tatum. And I hear a couple of his brothers just groaning off the side, like, oh, man, he's telling people he's Jason Tatum again. Like, they probably have heard it so many times, and they're like, come on, man. That's not your game. But, we always hype ourselves up a little bit more than what we are. But Drake can play some ball. Look at his high school tape. He can play some ball.
Testing my skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with just a few taps. Use the code CLNS for the first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
With the NBA playoffs in full swing and the Celtics looking like the best team in the East, I'm trying to go to a game so I can witness their greatness in person. And to get those tickets, I'm going to be using Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Buying tickets on Game Time is extremely easy. All you have to do is click on the team that you want to see, browse through the available options, then click on those games. Then you can go through filters like price, where you want your seat to be, all that good stuff. Click, get a panoramic view of the seat that you're going to buy, and it can be as easy as a one-click purchase for your ticket. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
But yeah, I think that you got a guy who, and it was interesting because he used the comparison, and I think he was trying to be careful with this, but he used a Tom Brady reference, and mostly in reference of like, hey, the way he gets smacked on North Carolina. I don't know if this is something that Drake loved to hear as something that sold his head coach, but he was telling me, he was like, hey, the way Drake was getting smacked, he was like, it was just him out there sometimes. They didn't have a lot of real players, and he was just getting smacked. And he would get right back up, wouldn't bother him one bit. And it looked just for a little bit, it looked like Tom Brady and the way he could take that punishment, just to take the punishment and get back up and do it again. And I could tell when Jerod was saying that, like it did something for him. Like, he's a defensive guy. He wants to know if his quarterback is tough enough. And the toughness seems like it's not an issue. The competitiveness seems like it's not an issue. And then he's going to trust his coaches to be able to develop the other mechanics or whatever else it needs for him to become that player. I'll transition that to your second question, because I was a little long-winded on this first part.
Yeah.
Keep an eye on Ben McAdoo. I'll just say this. I don't know how the whole flow is going to happen as far as like what the communication is in Drake helmet and all that stuff. I'm not going to BS you on that. I don't know how it's all going to fall out. But one thing I was told by Jerod and by multiple people, Ben McAdoo is going to have a huge role for Drake Maye. They hired him for a reason. They think that he's a quarterback savant. He's been a former head coach, and there's a thought there that he can develop Drake Maye. And so, not saying that he's going to have more role than Alex Van Pelt, but I'd say that Ben McAdoo is going to have a really significant role in developing Drake Maye. And I think, you're going to really want to listen to, whenever Ben McAdoo gets a chance to talk to you guys, listen to whatever he feels like he's working on with Drake, because I think those are going to be principles that you see throughout the year, whether Drake started in week 1 or not. And so the last thing I'll say about the too many coaches in his ear, I thought it was a great point by Jerod, and a good awareness, because last year this time I was with another team. I usually, just kind of perspective for me, they send me to a team every year for draft coverage. And it's usually they give me a choice or two between teams. For this year, I wanted to be in New England. I thought it was a very interesting story. And last year they had the first overall pick there. They took Bryce Young. I did a lot of homework on that process. And I remember it was not brought up then, but they had so many different offensive coaches in mind. The thought there was, hey, we created this all-star coaching staff. They went and got Thomas Brown and Jim Caldwell and Josh McCown, and you have Frank Reich, all these guys who are offensive guys, and there's a few other guys in that building too, potentially working with Bryce Young. And by like week 3, I kept hearing that like there's so many voices in Bryce's head. He doesn't know what's going on. Like, they're trying to tell Bryce this. They're trying to tell Bryce, we're going to do more shotgun, Bryce, or we're going to do more under center. Bryce only wants to do shotgun. There's just so much going back and forth that, like, for a young guy, even somebody as smart as Bryce, because that was the thing with Bryce in the pre-draft process. They were like, hey, he can handle it all. He can handle a lot more than a typical rookie because of, how he's come up and how he processes things. And I think because of that, they gave him way too much. Everybody wanted to be the guy, like, hey, I'm going to give you this insight that makes you great. Or, hey, let me get this little footwork thing here. Or if you look at, and I think there needs to be a clear lineage, and there may already be internally. That's not something they have to share with us, but there needs to be a clear lineage of like, okay, who is responsible of talking to Bryce pre-snap? You only have a certain amount of time into the 15-second mark. How does it look like during game week? Is there a certain person that works with him during mechanics? Is it the same person that's working with him on his 15-yard intermediate routes and what he's seeing there? Is it the same person that's looking at film with him? Like, you got a quarterback coach, you got a Ben McAdoo, and then you have Alex Van Pelt. 3 really main guys that I think will have the most hands on him. I'm not saying 3 is too many. I'm not saying it's not too many. I'm just saying there needs to be clear responsibilities there. And I think that's something that's going to be essential for Drake.